Carissa Johnson, and I'm a rock artist from Boston, Massachusetts. I started doing music because I needed an outlet for all of my frustrations and just feelings. When growing up, I didn't have maybe a best friend, or going through high school and middle school, and in those early stages of discovering myself and being like, who am I? I'm so lost. I need somewhere to put these feelings, and I don't know how to express it any other way than through writing it down and saying it in a different way rather than directly, and in a way that maybe other people could relate to, or just putting it to a melody that can even add even more feeling to it. And the goal was never anything superficial. It was just to get my feelings out and to try and make things better for myself and for other people. So I think some artists can lose themselves after that and maybe get caught up in the other parts of it that go along with it. And I think we all know like those sort of things, just the superficial stuff that's not the music. And I always want the focus to be there on the songs, on the lyrics, and on the reason why it even started in the first place, which is completely genuine, and which is always in here, and it's always going to be there. And as you progress through anything, I think things change and grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's the way that it should be, but it's just good to always stay grounded and rooted, and I feel like I have a good hold on that, and I always want to realize that, and I've been building a foundation over the past few years that I feel like is pretty strong, and just want to keep going through that and not let all the other stuff get in the way, and I think it's important for every artist to do that. Yeah, when I was younger, and my dad had CDs all around the house and guitars laying around, I'd pick up some of the CDs, or even just ones he'd have in the car that he'd play, that songs would just stick out and a melody would just catch me a certain way. And there was one song that comes to mind. It's called No Thugs in Our House by XTC. And I had a little Discman and headphones that I'd play that song on loop for days. And it was just my favorite thing in the world. And I just couldn't even explain the feeling of just listening to that one song and being like, I don't even know what they're saying or what's going on or what the story is. But the way that his voice sounds and the way that the melody is, it just hit me in a certain way that I was like, I want to do that, whatever that is. And that song was the song for me for growing up, and just listening to that on the Discman. And there were a couple other songs by XTC that really stuck with me too. But then it ended up kind of changing over to like some of the Ramones, like Pet Sematary was a song that also kind of gave me a feeling of like, man, like there's something here and I don't know what it is and I don't know what this feeling is, but this song is the only thing that's making me feel that. And I just would get the song stuck in my head for weeks at a time, and I just wanted to create that, and that was my goal, and I didn't know how to when I was younger, but I always envisioned it happening at some point, and just not knowing how it was going to happen. So having a guitar or a bass or just being able to sing and all that stuff is like just so important for me because of that feeling. So I've grown up in Boston, in the scene there. I've been playing out around town for about 7 or 8 years now in various bands, and with my solo project. My solo project's fairly new. It's only been being played out with it for about 2 years now. But I've seen a lot about the Boston scene, seen a lot of New York and LA, and a lot of places in between, and they all differ so much. Growing up in Boston, I remember trying to get a show in the city was really hard because you had to have a draw. And not having any fans or even just knowing people that would go to the shows because you're so young and no one was able to get in. That was a challenge, but once that first band of mine, Left Hand Blue, got into the city, we'd play more and more shows there and meet more and more people, connect with more and more bands, and then through that I was able to meet other people and meet other bands with my solo project, and play bigger and bigger stages and check off more and more goals. And that's been over the course of the past 7 or 8 years. And Boston, I've realized, differs a lot from a lot of the other cities in the US. Boston has a pretty great rock scene, pretty great metal scene. There's a lot of R&B and hip hop. and a lot of underground stuff too, and in the surrounding suburbs as well, like in Lowell, and even in New Hampshire and Manchester. There's just so many different cities, so many different towns that focus on so many different genres, and it's really cool how on the East Coast you can go just the span of 1,000 miles and hit 12, 13 different markets. And it's different on the West Coast where you got LA and San Francisco and Portland and Seattle, but it's more spread out. And I think each one of those scenes has its own bit of magic, just as Boston does, or Manchester does, or Atlantic City, or anywhere else on the East Coast. But each one is so different, and I think the subject matter of the songs is different, and I think the look is different, and the genres change, and who's going out to the shows change, and even that can be affected by what are venues charging for the door. Are they charging for the door? Just is music a focus in this town? My band went out and did a tour in the Northwest, so we wanted to hit Portland, Seattle, and Vancouver last August. And those were striving music scenes, and we did really well, ended up breaking even. And then I wanted to go back out and do another tour, and we did the Southwest, and hit scenes that weren't as striving or as thriving with music, and that was definitely a bit of a struggle, hitting new markets and not having a draw again, just like starting out in any new city. So those towns were definitely focused on sports, or focused on like nature or something like that. Maybe like the scenes, there was music there, but it just wasn't the main focus, as in Portland or Seattle or something like that. I've noticed in New York City too, there's a really good scene for rock and punk. Punk is very much alive there still, and I love that so much. And I love going to Brooklyn and Manhattan, and even in Albany, there's a lot of good music there too. I think all over the U.S., it's just like the States, everyone is just so different and special, and with music as well, they all have their own special thing that makes them unique, and I think that's really cool, and just being able to see so much of the country in the past year or so has been really, really cool, and to connect with so many different artists of so many different genres and backgrounds has been just enlightening almost, and I always end up kind of comparing everything back to Boston because it's the scene I know so well, and I really feel a connection to that scene, but I also feel a strong disconnect where I want to reach out and go everywhere in the world and play music and meet everybody. I have a good story. The first night of my first tour with my first band in Burlington, Vermont, my bass got stolen, and I had just got my bass, and I had just got a new case for it, and I was super stoked to be on tour. Everything was great, and then played the show, loaded out, watched the next band, went back outside, and the only thing that was missing from my car was my bass and my amp, and the door was wide open. So someone had ran off with it in the middle of the night. It was probably like 1 a.m., and none of us knew what to do. I was 18, my band was all 18, and we were just freaking out, and it's funny because I had a feeling when I was in the venue that someone was taking my bass, but I was like, nah, everyone's so cool here, like everyone's so nice, like why would anyone do that? But then it happened. It was like I just envisioned it and it was just gone. And then we called the cops. No one knew anything about anything, and then there was a party house down the street. They all came asking questions, how much was it worth, all this stuff. And being 18, I was telling them, just like, oh my god, like, but like I was, hysterical. But we drove up, we ended up driving around Burlington, Vermont for 4 hours until about 4 a.m., trying to find it, and then we went through every emotion, and then I was just laughing by the end of the night, just like, it's gone. And then we got a call the next day. We were in New York, and someone had called the venue and said that the bass was found. It was a mom reporting her son, saying that he had brought home an amp and a bass. And she had called the venue we played at. They called us, but then they didn't have any contact information, and the guy at the bar didn't really care too much about this scenario. So we had known that it was found, but no one knew how to get in touch with who had called or if they'd call back. But luckily they brought the bass and the amp back to the venue. And we don't know the real story. I was just like, get the bass to the venue, get it back to my house. Like, I don't care if I have it for the rest of this tour. Just want to know it's safe. And it was the only thing in that car that had any sentimental value whatsoever. So it was just a shock that that was the only thing that was gone, or that anything was gone in the first place, that anyone had broken in. But we got it back. My friend Jessie Hansen, who was performing that night, was actually heading back towards Boston, and she brought it back to me, and the day I got home from tour, my bass was there. So in the meantime, I borrowed basses, or we played some open mics in New York, and I used an egg shaker, and we made it work, and it was a bonding experience.